I want to start by saying how glad I am that I'm actually following Commodore Vassan, because I want to start by talking a little bit about China in terms of how it applies to my stated subject. The fact of the matter is, for too long, the United States looked at Pakistan through the lens of China in a way that was to India's disadvantage. We had, of course, both the legacy of Nehru's ideology when President Harry S. Truman first approached the partition of India and how we would balance India and China. And then where China really became a malign consideration was under Henry Kissinger and his cynical approach to the region, where in order to ingratiate himself to China, to the People's Republic of China, he was willing to throw India under the bus. And of course, when we look at with the benefit of hindsight, we're still paying the price today with regard to Kissinger's policies towards China, which arguably many have had told him that he should have seen coming, including many Indians themselves. That said, I don't want to just talk about the history. There is a pattern of the United States ignoring Pakistan when we no longer need it. And we've seen this throughout history when it comes, for example, to the Symington Amendment, when it comes to our relations with Pakistan after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan as well, and when it comes to our relations with Pakistan after 9/11. Although in that case, it was like giving gasoline to the arsonist when we consider Pakistan's role in terror. That said, I could see this pattern is going to continue at least, and I have no problem with it. There's absolutely no reason, given Pakistan's behavior, why the United States should continue to treat Pakistan as an ally, or frankly, as anything other than an adversary. Now, to put it mildly, President Donald Trump doesn't have deep knowledge of the world. And to put it a little bit less politely, I don't think that Donald Trump could be the valedictorian of a summer school class. The fact of the matter is, we saw this today with his statement with regard to what's happening in Kashmir itself, when he talked about the fight going back more than 1,000 years. He simply doesn't understand what the depth or the complexity of the situation is. That said, there's an opportunity here for India to educate him. Diplomats right now are far less important in the Trump administration than his personal relationships. We see his personal relationships at play, for example, with regard to his outreach to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Turkey, whom he respects, but unfortunately is an influence towards a destabilizing policy in the region. We see Trump's embrace of men like Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia. And Prime Minister Modi is very, very fortunate that he has a close and established relationship with Donald Trump. Now, under President Trump, there is a tendency within Washington to wing it. He doesn't trust the system. He refers to it as the swamp or the deep state. And he prefers to do everything through his own small set of advisors. India, of course, is far different. Prime Minister Modi may be a strong leader, but India has a strong system upon which he relies, especially with regard to the foreign ministry. And so it's traditional that India would use its diplomats for outreach. In this case, it's essential vis-a-vis Pakistan, especially after the Kashmir attack, for Prime Minister Modi to use his close relations with Donald Trump to channel Donald Trump in the right direction. So what should that direction be? Symbolically, after Hamas's October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel, President Joe Biden flew to Israel to declare his solidarity. How powerful would it be if Donald Trump didn't simply issue meaningless statements from Washington, D.C., but flew to New Delhi, if not to Kashmir itself, in order to declare his solidarity with India? That would be a move that would have generational repercussion. But symbolism isn't enough here. There is absolutely the chief and only demand that the chief and only demand that India should make, and it's something that I wrote today in First Post. First Post just put the article up, is that there is no substitute for the formal designation of Pakistan as a state sponsor of terror. We've sanctioned Pakistan before with regard to its nuclear program and other things. I would go further and say that when you have terrorists related to Lashkar-e-Taiba that are supported by Pakistan, that are geographically, they can only come from one location, Pakistan itself. When you have them hunting down Hindus and other non-Muslims, trying to force them to say Islamic prayer, trying to check to see whether they're circumcised or not. It was basically a hunt for Hindus, motivated by nothing other than religious and national hatred. It is terrorism by any definition. And look, policy only works, foreign policy only works when it's calibrated to reality, not when it's calibrated to wishful thinking of what we wish Pakistan would be, and what frankly, arguably, Pakistan might have been for the first 10 years before the ISI really consolidated power, especially since the liberation and the independence of Bangladesh. But this brings me to the Inter-Services Intelligence Agency. If Donald Trump was able to designate the entire Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran as a terror organization, then there is a precedent for designating the entirety of the ISI. Now, of course, Washington and New Delhi do not see Iran policy the same. But let me explain the logic for a moment of the designation of the entirety of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran. One could argue that the United States only should have designated the Quds Force or the military units within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The reason why there is such a push to designate the entirety of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was because of its economic wing, called Khatam al-Anbiya. Now, if the official budget of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is only about $8 billion per year, the smuggling income that the Khatam al-Anbiya brings into the Revolutionary Guard is about $11 to $13 billion per year. On top of which, if you look at the Persian, the Farsi language press, there's up to $50 billion worth of single source, no bid contracts to Khatam al-Anbiya, to Revolutionary Guard owned companies. What that basically means is that you almost have an order of magnitude higher importance of the economic wing of the Revolutionary Guard than you do of the military wing in terms of the budgetary support. Now, by designating the entirety of the Revolutionary Guard, whether you agree with US policy or not, what we basically did is increase liability to any other foreign company that would partner with Revolutionary Guard run companies. So for example, the French automobile manufacturer Peugeot, which had been working with Iranian automobile manufacturers, suddenly found themselves liable from lawsuits from victims of terrorism. And other companies simply decided to unwind their financial relations with the Revolutionary Guard. because of reputational damage, which they might suffer. And this includes East Asian companies and so forth. Even though many people find unilateral American sanctions to be obnoxious and to be a violation of their sovereignty, the fact of the matter is they can in many ways be effective. So back to the ISI. We heard again from Commodore Hassan reference to the ISI's economic dealings, to its business interests. If we were to designate the entirety of the ISI, what we would be doing is financially handicapping all of those businesses and anyone who trades with them. Even when it comes to the United States and China, we will see what happens with the US and China trade war. But the fact of the matter is, most Chinese companies, if given a choice, continue to trade with certain Pakistani companies or sell to the United States or Europe. They're going to choose selling to the United States and Europe. It's simply a matter of financial common sense. And so by designating the entirety of the ISI, we can put tremendous pressure on the organization. And look, the whole point isn't simply to punish Pakistan. Ultimately, the goal of the United States policy, as it is the goal of India policy, is to live at peace with Pakistan and to have Pakistan be at peace with itself and its neighbors. The fact of the matter is Pakistan is failing. It's failing economically. It's failing through corruption. And what the ISI is doing is simply trying to fan the flames of terrorism inside India in order to distract the Pakistani public from Pakistan's own failings. Now, the reason why this is incredibly important now to tackle Pakistan as a state sponsor of terror and the ISI as a foreign terrorist organization is because we see Pakistan opening up a 2, if not 3-front war. We have the terrorist war in Kashmir. We have the Khalistani threat in Punjab, which again, it's an ISI front. And increasingly, through his own naivete, we have Muhammad Yunus becoming a useful idiot of the ISI as he tries to transform Pakistan or allows Pakistan to be transformed into an ISI proxy under Jamaat-e-Islami. So, when it comes to Modi's phone call with Trump, of course, handling Trump is always a very difficult issue. And India may not like the way it needs to sell the case to Donald Trump. But I would actually argue that Donald Trump needs to be reminded not only of Osama bin Laden's support and his safe haven in Abbottabad, but he also needs to be reminded of the 2008 Mumbai attacks. And when it comes to the Mumbai attacks, it's important to remind Donald Trump that 4 Americans were killed. Now, I acknowledge it's obnoxious to focus on 4 Americans when hundreds of Indians were killed or injured. But we have to sell the case to Donald Trump himself. And the fact is, that case needs to be that the ISI and the Pakistani leadership is playing Donald Trump for a fool. They think he's weak. They think he's stupid. But I, Prime Minister Modi, respect you. India respects you. That's the way we get to the goal of designating Pakistan. And then the simple response is, if Pakistan wants to be undesignated, it has to have meaningful reform. But it should certainly join countries like North Korea and Iran on the state sponsor of terrorism list. And in the past, other countries have gotten off. Sudan, South Yemen, Iraq. It is possible, but we need to look at this objectively rather than subjectively. Now, I'm going to hand the floor back. I'm actually in California right now, in Silicon Valley, or as many people call it, the Bangalore of the United States. But it's just past 5 in the morning here, and so what I want to do is turn the floor back over